Four words, whispered behind champagne flutes and diamond necklaces at the city's most exclusive charity gala. Four words that had followed Lina Morimoto her entire life, through boardrooms, country clubs, and now this glittering ballroom filled with people who measured worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. But tonight, something would shatter the carefully constructed walls between worlds. Tonight, a mechanic in a borrowed suit and his 8-year-old daughter would do what millions of dollars in donations never could. Reveal the truth about who really deserves a seat at the table. If you want to see how one child's compassion rewrote an entire room's assumptions about power, belonging, and what it means to truly see someone, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Grandview Hotel ballroom had been designed to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings, crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes, marble floors polished to a mere shine, reflecting the carefully curated elegance of San Francisco's elite as they glided between cocktail tables draped in ivory silk. Every surface gleamed, every smile was practiced, every conversation was a transaction dressed up as friendship. Lina Morimoto stood alone near the north wall, a slim figure in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than the catering budget and felt absolutely nothing. Not nervousness, not anticipation. Just the familiar hollow weight of being simultaneously the most important person in the room and the most invisible. Is that her? The whisper carried across the marble like a stone skipping across water. Morimoto? Yes. The tech billionaire. Quantum something or other. I heard she barely speaks English. Well, she certainly doesn't speak to anyone. Lina's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her champagne flute. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge. After 15 years of building quantum bridge technologies from a Stanford dorm room into an $8 billion global infrastructure company, she'd learned that defending yourself only confirmed what people already believed. Better to be silent, better to be still, better to let them think whatever made them comfortable. Mommy said we should be nice to everyone tonight. A child's voice, clear and guileless, cut through the adult murmuring nearby. Even people who look lonely. Mia, honey, some people want to be alone. Lina recognized the tone. The gentle warning parents gave children about boundaries, about not bothering important people. She'd heard variations of it her entire childhood in Osaka, then again in Sacramento, then at Stanford, then in every boardroom where she'd been the only woman, the only Japanese face, the only person under 40 who'd earned their seat through work instead of inheritance. Always the outsider, always the one to leave alone. She took a measured sip of champagne she didn't want and let her gaze drift across the ballroom. 200 of the Bay Area's wealthiest philanthropists gathered to write checks that would ease their tax burdens and fill their social calendars. The cause tonight was education equity, a concept most of these people supported in theory but would never allow to touch their own gated communities. Lina had donated $500,000 for the privilege of standing in this room, being stared at, and counting the minutes until she could leave. Daddy, why is that lady all by herself? Lina's eyes shifted slightly. Across the room, near one of the tall windows overlooking the city, a man crouched beside a little girl in a yellow dress that looked homemade. The child pointed directly at Lina with the blunt honesty only 8-year-olds possessed. The man, tall, broad-shouldered, clearly uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit, gently lowered his daughter's hand. Mia, we don't point, and we don't ask questions like that. But you said it's important to notice when people need kindness. I did say that. So? The man, Caleb, Lina would learn later, straightened slowly, his eyes meeting Lina's across 50 feet of marble and pretension. For a brief, strange moment, something passed between them. Not attraction, not pity. Something quieter and more honest. Recognition. The recognition of two people who didn't belong in this room for entirely different reasons and knew it. Then his daughter tugged his hand and the moment broke. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice boomed through the sound system. Marcus Chen, the foundation director, stood at the podium with the kind of casual authority that came from never once questioning your right to be heard. If you'll begin finding your seats, we'll start the program in just a few moments. The crowd moved like a slow tide toward the round tables arranged throughout the ballroom. Lena consulted the seating chart near the entrance, found her assigned position, table 12, naturally positioned at the edge of the room, and made her way through the crowd. No one met her eyes. Several conversations paused as she passed, then resumed in lower tones. Us doesn't even try to fit in. Heard she fired 300 people last quarter. That's what happens when you let tech money into old philanthropy. Lena kept her expression neutral, her posture perfect. This was the armor she'd built over decades. Impeccable presentation, flawless professionalism, absolute control. If they wanted to see her as cold, foreign, other, fine. She'd give them exactly what they expected and nothing more. Table 12 was empty when she arrived. 8 place settings, 7 vacant chairs. Lena sat in the position assigned to her and folded her hands in her lap, preparing for the particular loneliness of being surrounded by empty seats, while every other table filled with laughter and connection. But then, excuse me? Is this table 12? Lena looked up. The man from across the room stood there, his daughter's small hand clasped in his larger one. Up close, Lena could see details she'd missed from a distance. The calluses on his fingers, the slight wear at the cuffs of his jacket, the careful way he'd shaved, leaving a small nick near his jaw, and his eyes, dark blue, direct, and remarkably kind. Yes, Lena said quietly. Great, He consulted a small card. Turner, Caleb and Mia Turner. The little girl beamed. I'm Mia. I'm 8 3/4. Despite everything, Lena felt the corner of her mouth twitch. The 3/4 are very important at that age. Exactly. Mia climbed into the chair beside Lena with the confidence of someone who'd never learned that some people weren't supposed to sit next to billionaire CEOs. What's your name? Mia, Caleb said gently. Let's give the lady some space. Lena. The word came out before Lena quite meant it to. She never gave her first name at these events. Always Ms. Morimoto. Or, to a select few, Lena Morimoto, Quantum Bridge Technologies. Never just Lena, but something about this child's unguarded warmth disarmed her. That's pretty, Mia announced. Are you here by yourself? Mia, it's all right. Lena surprised herself again. Yes, I am. That's sad. Everybody should have someone to sit with. Mia pulled out the chair directly beside her and patted it. Daddy, sit here. Caleb hesitated, his eyes meeting Lena's with an unspoken question. Is this okay? My daughter doesn't understand boundaries, but I do. Lena gave the smallest nod. He sat. For several long moments, none of them spoke. Around the ballroom, conversation swelled, the confident chatter of people who'd never questioned their right to fill space with their voices. At table 12, silence settled like something fragile and new. Then Mia said, Do you like butterflies? Lena blinked. I haven't thought about it. You should think about it. They're very important. Daddy says every living thing has a purpose, even if people can't see it right away. Your daddy sounds wise, Caleb laughed, a soft, self-deprecating sound. My daddy mostly sounds like he's making things up as he goes along. Isn't that what all good parents do? Lena heard herself say. The surprise in Caleb's expression told her she'd revealed something she hadn't meant to. Lena Morimoto, Ice Queen CEO, had opinions about parenting, had perhaps even been shaped by parents herself, though the press rarely mentioned her family. I suppose that's true, Caleb said slowly. Are you? He trailed off, the question hanging. No, Lena said. No children. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's fine. And strangely, it was. Most people who asked that question carried judgment in their tone. What kind of woman chooses career over family? But Caleb's inquiry held only gentle curiosity. Daddy had to raise me all by himself, Mia volunteered, swinging her legs under the table. Mommy died when I was little. I don't really remember her. Lena's breath caught. She looked at Caleb, who'd gone very still. Mia, sweetheart, you don't need to tell everyone that. Why not? It's true. And you said we should never be ashamed of true things. I did say that, Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that spoke of old grief worn smooth by time. I just don't want to make people uncomfortable. You haven't, Lena said quietly. Then before she could stop herself, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Caleb's eyes held hers for a moment. It's been 6 years. We're doing okay. You're doing great, Mia corrected. Daddy fixes things, cars and motorcycles and sometimes refrigerators, and he's teaching me how engines work. Is he? Yep. Last week I learned about combustion. That's when, Mia, I don't think Ms. Caleb paused. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. Morimoto. But Lena is fine. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Morimoto, as in Quantum Bridge Technologies? Lena's shoulders tensed automatically. Here it came, the shift, the calculation, the sudden awareness that they weren't just tablemates, but separated by about $8 billion and an unbridgeable social divide. But Caleb didn't lean away, didn't change his tone. He simply nodded slowly, a question forming in his eyes. Yes, Lena confirmed. Wow. Okay, that's... He laughed again, that same self-deprecating sound. That's quite a bit bigger than refrigerators. Both involve making things work that are broken, Lena found herself saying. The scale is different, the principle isn't. Caleb studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. I've never heard anyone describe billion-dollar infrastructure that way. Most people in my industry would find the comparison insulting. Do you? No. Lena realized she meant it. I started Quantum Bridge because I wanted to fix something broken, the way different technologies and cultures fail to communicate across borders. Everything else just grew around that. That's really cool, Mia said. Okay, do you like what you do? The question was so simple, so direct, that Lena had to pause. When was the last time someone had asked her that? Not about stock prices or market share or innovation pipelines, but simply whether she liked her work? I do, she said slowly, though sometimes it's lonely. Because people don't understand it? Because people don't try to understand it. Or me. The words came out more honest than Lena intended. She could feel Caleb's attention sharpen, his mechanic's instinct for finding the problem beneath the surface. Is that why you were standing alone? Mia asked. Mia, it's all right. Lena looked down at her hands, folded neatly on the white tablecloth. Yes. People find me difficult to approach. Why? Because I'm different. I look different. I communicate differently. I don't perform emotion the way Americans expect. That's their problem, Mia said matter-of-factly. Not yours. Lena felt something warm bloom in her chest, something she couldn't quite name. When did you become so wise? Daddy says treating people badly because they're different is a choice. Nobody makes you be mean. You just are. Or you're not. Caleb cleared his throat. I may have oversimplified some complex social dynamics. No, Lena said softly. I think you got it exactly right. Their eyes met again, and this time the connection held. In Caleb's gaze, Lena saw something she rarely encountered. Someone looking at her, truly looking, without calculation or judgment or the weight of expectations. Just seeing. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Chen's voice boomed again. Welcome to the 23rd Annual Education Equity Foundation Gala. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Lena automatically prepared to retreat into herself, to become the silent observer, the checkbook, the foreign presence tolerated for her money. But then Mia's small hand slipped into hers under the table. Warm, trusting, absolutely guileless. And Lena found herself holding on. We have an exceptional program tonight, Marcus continued, his smile gleaming under the chandeliers. But first, I'd like to acknowledge some of our most generous donors. When I call your name, please stand so we can show our appreciation. Names began to flow. Wilson, Hartley, Chen, each accompanied by applause, by recognition, by belonging. And of course, we must acknowledge our largest single donor this year, Ms. Lena Morimoto of Quantum Bridge Technologies, who has contributed $500,000 to our scholarship fund. The applause was polite, measured. Lena stood, nodded once, and sat back down as quickly as possible. Under the table, Mia squeezed her hand. "That was a lot of money," the little girl whispered. "It's for a good cause." "Did you used to be poor? Is that why you want to help kids go to school?" Caleb made a sound that might have been a laugh or a groan. "Mia, you can't just—" "Yes," Lena interrupted. She looked at Mia's earnest face and decided that 8-year-olds deserved honesty. "My parents worked very hard so I could go to good schools. I remember what it felt like to be the different one, the one who didn't quite fit. I want other children to have opportunities, even if they're different too." "That's nice." Mia thought about this. "Did the kids at school make fun of you?" "Sometimes." "That's mean." "Yes." "Did it make you sad?" Lena paused. No one had ever asked her that. Business journalists wanted to know about her strategy, her vision, her leadership style. Society reporters wanted to know why she didn't smile more, socialize more, perform more. But no one had ever simply asked if childhood exclusion had made her sad. "Yes," she said quietly. "It did. I'm sorry people were mean to you." Mia leaned against Lena's arm, a gesture of uncomplicated comfort. "I think you're nice, and pretty, and very smart." Something cracked in Lena's chest, a small fissure in armor she'd worn so long she'd forgotten it was there. "Thank you," she managed. Caleb's voice was gentle. "You don't have to answer her questions if—" "I don't mind." And Lena realized she truly didn't. Mia's curiosity held no malice, no calculation, just genuine interest in understanding another person. When was the last time someone had shown Lena that kind of simple, unconditional interest? The dinner service began. Servers in crisp white shirts moved between tables, delivering plates of food that had been designed to look impressive rather than taste good. Lena pushed her salad around, hyper-aware of the glances sliding toward table 12. She could imagine the whispers. "Did you see? Morimoto is sitting with that maintenance worker and his child. How did they even get tickets? This isn't a charity for—" "So, Lena," Caleb said, cutting through her spiraling thoughts. "Mia mentioned you work with technology that bridges cultures. What does that actually mean?" Lena glanced at him, gauging whether this was polite dinner conversation or genuine interest. His expression suggested the latter. "Most communication infrastructure is built by Western companies using Western assumptions about how information should flow," she began. "But different cultures process and share information very differently. Quantum Bridge creates adaptive networks that can seamlessly translate not just language, but context, cultural reference points, even emotional tone. So like, really smart translation software. More than that, it's about making sure that when a doctor in Tokyo consults with a specialist in Sao Paulo, they're not just speaking the same language, they're understanding the same concepts. That when businesses collaborate across borders, they're not losing critical nuance in translation." Caleb nodded slowly. "That's incredible. How did you figure out how to do that?" "By being the translation layer myself for most of my life." Lena heard the bitterness creep into her voice and tried to pull it back. "I grew up between cultures. I learned very young that fitting in meant constantly adjusting how I spoke, how I expressed myself, how I presented information. I got tired of being the only one who had to change. So I built technology that could do that work instead." "That's not just smart," Caleb said. "That's brave." Lena blinked. "Brave?" "Yeah. You took something painful and turned it into something that helps other people. That's not just business innovation, that's courage." No one had ever called her brave. Brilliant, yes. Successful, certainly. Intimidating, frequently. But brave? "I just wanted to solve a problem," she said. "The best things usually start that way." They held each other's gaze for a moment, and Lena felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not attraction exactly, though Caleb was handsome in a lived-in, weathered kind of way, but something quieter. Connection. The startling recognition of being understood by someone who had no reason to understand her, and every reason to dismiss her as just another tech billionaire playing philanthropist. "What about you?" she asked. "How did a mechanic end up at a $500 a plate charity dinner?" Caleb's smile turned rueful. "My boss's wife serves on the foundation board. She had an extra ticket and thought Mia might enjoy dressing up and seeing how the other half lives." He made air quotes around the phrase. I think she meant well. Do you feel like the other half? Right now, yeah. Look at this room, Lena. These people. He gestured subtly toward the surrounding tables. They live in a completely different world. They think a problem means their stock portfolio took a small hit or their club membership got delayed. Meanwhile, I'm juggling rent and Mia's school supplies and whether I can afford to fix the transmission in my truck before it completely dies. Why did you come then? Because Mia's never been to anything like this. Because she deserves to see beautiful things and eat fancy food and wear a dress that makes her feel special. And because... He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. Because I want her to know that these spaces aren't just for people born into them, that she has just as much right to be here as anyone else, even if her dad is just a guy who fixes engines. Lena's throat tightened. You're not just anything. Tell that to them. Caleb nodded toward a nearby table where several women in jewels and designer gowns kept glancing their way, whispering behind their hands. They're staring at me, not you, Lena said. I'm the foreign billionaire who doesn't know how to small talk. You're just collateral damage. We're a pair then. Apparently so. Mia, who'd been quietly eating her dinner and listening to the adult conversation with the focused attention of a child trying to understand the complicated world of grown-ups, suddenly spoke up. Daddy, can I tell Lena about the butterfly garden? I don't think... I'd like to hear about it, Lena said. Mia's whole face lit up. We're building a butterfly garden at my school. We planted special flowers that butterflies like, and we made houses for them, and we're learning about metamorphosis. That's when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. It takes a really long time, and it looks like nothing's happening, but inside the chrysalis, everything is changing. That sounds like an excellent metaphor, Lena said softly. What's a metaphor? A way of understanding one thing by comparing it to another. Sometimes people need time in their chrysalis too, time to change where no one can see. Mia considered this seriously. Are you in a chrysalis? Mia! Caleb sounded genuinely mortified, but Lena found herself smiling, a real smile, small but genuine. Maybe I am. Maybe we all are sometimes. Well, I think you'll be a beautiful butterfly when you come out. The simple, honest faith in those words nearly undid Lena completely. She had to look away, blinking against the sudden heat in her eyes. Caleb must have seen because his voice gentled. Mia, why don't you go look at the dessert table? I think they have chocolate cake. Really? Mia scrambled down from her chair. Can I pick one for everyone? Sure, sweetheart, just one slice, though. As Mia scampered off, Caleb leaned slightly closer to Lena. I'm sorry, she doesn't understand when she's being too personal. She's being honest. It's refreshing. Still, you don't have to... Caleb. Lena turned to face him fully. I've spent the last 15 years in rooms full of people who say nothing honest, nothing real. They perform interest in my work while calculating how to profit from my connections. They smile and nod and never, ever ask if I'm sad or lonely or human. She paused. Your daughter treats me like a person, not a bank account, not a foreign novelty, just a person who might be sitting alone and might need kindness. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Caleb's expression softened. She gets that from her mom. Sarah was like that. She saw people, really saw them, not their circumstances or their mistakes or their usefulness, just them. She sounds remarkable. She was. Caleb's voice carried old grief worn smooth. Brain aneurysm. She went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. The doctor said she probably didn't feel anything, which I guess is supposed to be comforting. Is it? No, because I'd rather she'd felt something, fear, pain, anything, if it meant she got to say goodbye, if it meant Mia got to remember her mother's voice. He stopped, shaking his head. Sorry, you didn't sign up for my tragic backstory. You didn't sign up for mine either, but here we are. A beat of silence. Then Caleb asked, was it really that bad, the kids at school? Lena considered deflecting, maintaining the professional distance she'd perfected. But something about this moment, this unlikely table in a room full of strangers, made her want to tell the truth. I moved to California from Japan when I was 9. My English was good, but not perfect. My lunches were different. My parents bowed instead of hugging. I was quiet when American kids were loud, serious when they wanted everyone to be friendly. She traced a finger along the edge of her water glass. They called me the robot, said I didn't have feelings, that I was weird and cold and would never really belong. Kids are cruel. So are adults. They just use more polite language. Lena glanced around the ballroom. These people see exactly what those children saw. The difference is I've learned to armor myself against it. By becoming what they accused you of being, the observation was so accurate it hurt. By controlling the narrative, if I'm going to be seen as cold and foreign anyway, I might as well be impeccably professional, impossibly successful. At least then I'm useful. That sounds exhausting. It is. So why not just be yourself? Lena laughed, a hollow sound. Because myself isn't enough. It never has been. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. I think the problem isn't you. I think it's that you've been surrounded by people who don't deserve to know who you really are. Lena's breath caught. She looked at this mechanic in his borrowed suit, this single father who'd probably never read a stock report or attended a board meeting, and realized he understood something that her Harvard-educated board members never had. She wasn't broken. The system was. Before she could respond, Mia returned with 3 plates of chocolate cake balanced precariously in her small hands. I got the biggest slices. I can see that, Caleb said, helping her distribute the plates. Thank you, sweetheart. They ate dessert in companionable silence, and for the first time all evening, Lena felt her shoulders relax. The cake was too sweet, the conversation at surrounding tables too loud, but at table 12, something impossible was happening. She was making friends. Then Marcus Chen's voice cut through the ballroom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're incredibly honored tonight to have one of the Bay Area's most innovative leaders joining us. She's revolutionized global communications infrastructure, she's a fierce advocate for STEM education, and she's generously supporting our scholarship programs. Please welcome to the stage, Ms. Lena Morimoto. The applause was polite but scattered. Lena's stomach dropped. She hadn't prepared a speech. She never prepared speeches for these events because she was never asked to give them. She wrote checks, attended for appearances, and left. Speaking meant exposure. Speaking meant showing the room exactly how different she was, how her communication style didn't match their expectations. Speaking meant giving them ammunition. You've got this, Caleb said quietly beside her. Mia grabbed her hand and squeezed. Tell them about the chrysalis. Lena stood on shaking legs and made her way to the podium, hyper-aware of every eye in the ballroom tracking her movement. She could hear the whispers starting already. Is she really giving a speech? This should be interesting. Does she even know how to work a microphone? Lena gripped the podium edges and looked out at 200 faces. Some curious, some dismissive, some already judging her before she'd spoken a single word. And at table 12, a mechanic and his daughter looked at her like she was the bravest person in the room. Lena opened her mouth to speak, but what came out would shatter everything. Lena's fingers tightened on the podium. The microphone stood before her like a judgment, waiting to amplify every carefully controlled word, every slight accent that marked her as different, every pause that would confirm what this room already believed. She didn't belong here. Thank you for the introduction, she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I'm honored to support the Education Equity Foundation's important work. The words came out precisely, formally, exactly the way a tech CEO was supposed to sound at a charity gala. Safe, professional, utterly forgettable. She could see it in their faces already, the glaze of polite disinterest, the subtle checking of phones under tables. The way conversations at the back tables continued in lowered voices, confident she wouldn't say anything worth their attention. Education creates pathways, Lena continued, falling back on the talking points she'd memorized for these situations. Quantum Bridge Technologies believes in investing in human capital across all demographics. Our scholarship initiative will provide funding for 50 students from underrepresented communities to pursue degrees in STEM fields. Applause. Brief and obligatory. Lena felt the familiar numbness settling over her, the protective shell she wore at these events, turning herself into exactly what they expected. A checkbook with a face. A a foreign billionaire performing American philanthropy without quite understanding it. But then her eyes found table 12. Mia sat forward in her chair, watching Lena with absolute focus, as if every word mattered, as if Lena herself mattered. And Caleb looked at her with something that might have been concern, or perhaps recognition. The recognition of someone watching another person disappear into armor they knew all too well. "Tell them about the chrysalis," Mia had said. Lena's prepared remarks sat heavy in her mind, safe and sterile and utterly dishonest. She could deliver them. Finish this speech in 2 more minutes, receive her polite applause and return to her table and maintain the careful distance she'd built between herself and the world. Or she could do something terrifying. She could tell the truth. "But those statistics don't tell you why this matters to me," Lena heard herself say, deviating from her mental script. "They don't tell you what it's like to be 9 years old, sitting in a California classroom, knowing every answer but terrified to raise your hand because your accent makes you a target." The room shifted. Conversation stopped. Attention sharpened. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept going. "They don't tell you what it feels like to eat lunch alone every day because your food is different, your manners are different, your whole existence is different from everyone around you. They don't tell you about the teacher who pronounced your name wrong for an entire year and got angry when you tried to correct her. Or about the guidance counselor who suggested maybe you'd be more comfortable in ESL classes, even though you'd tested into advanced English." Someone near the front shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. "They don't tell you about spending your teenage years learning to make yourself smaller, quieter, less Japanese and more American, because fitting in seemed like the only path to survival. About training yourself not to bow in greeting, not to remove your shoes at the door, not to speak in your mother's language even at home, because you were so desperate to erase every marker of difference." Lena's voice remained steady, but something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't reading from a script anymore. She was excavating years of carefully buried truth. And those statistics definitely don't tell you what it's like to build a billion-dollar company and still walk into rooms where people assume you're either the translator or someone's foreign wife, where your technical expertise is questioned at every turn, where success is attributed to luck or diversity initiatives, rather than the 15-hour days and sleepless nights you poured into making something impossible become real. The silence in the ballroom was absolute now. Lena could see shock on some faces, recognition on others, and on a few, particularly among the older donors, something that might have been guilt. "So yes, I donated $500,000 to this foundation. And yes, I'm funding scholarships for students who don't look like the traditional faces of American STEM education. Because I remember being that student. I remember being invisible and hypervisible at the same time. Ignored until someone needed a target, then suddenly everyone could see exactly how I didn't fit." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the room. "Education didn't just give me opportunities. It gave me weapons. Tools to prove I belonged in spaces designed to exclude me. And I want other children who feel foreign in their own schools, their own country, to have those same weapons." The applause that followed was different this time. Louder, yes, but also uncertain, as if the audience wasn't quite sure whether they should be moved or defensive. Lena began to step back from the microphone, her brief moment of honesty already feeling like too much exposure. But then a hand rose near the back of the room. Thomas Bradford, real estate magnate, old money, and the kind of man who'd never questioned his right to speak in any space. Lena had researched all the major donors before attending. Bradford had built his fortune on luxury developments that had displaced working-class communities across the Bay Area. "Ms. Morimoto," he called out, not waiting to be recognized. "That's quite a compelling personal story, but I think many of us are wondering, if America and American culture were so difficult for you, why stay? Why build your company here instead of returning to Japan where you'd presumably be more comfortable?" The question landed like a slap. Lena heard the accusation beneath it. "If you're going to criticize us, why take our money? Why succeed in our country and then complain about how we treated you?" Several people nodded. The younger generation looked uncomfortable, but the older donors, the ones who controlled the real money, leaned forward with interest. "That's an excellent question," Lena said, fighting to keep her voice level. "The answer is complicated. I don't think it should be," Bradford interrupted. "Either you're grateful for the opportunities America provided, or you're not. Either you embrace American values or you don't. You can't have it both ways. I don't think Ms. Morimoto suggested. Marcus Chen tried to intervene, but Bradford wasn't finished. I'm simply saying that if someone finds our culture so unwelcoming, perhaps the problem isn't entirely with the culture. Perhaps it's with someone who refuses to adapt, who maintains this sense of being perpetually foreign despite decades in this country. At a certain point, fitting in becomes a choice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some uncertain, all watching to see how Lena would respond. This was the trap she'd spent her entire career trying to avoid. Speak up, and you're angry, ungrateful, too sensitive. Stay silent, and you confirm every assumption about being passive, cold, unable to defend yourself. There was no right answer. There had never been a right answer. Lena opened her mouth and had no idea what would come out. But then a chair scraped against marble. Caleb stood. Not dramatically, not with the entitled confidence of someone like Bradford who'd never questioned his right to take up space, but firmly, deliberately. He began walking toward the podium. The room collectively held its breath. Who was this man in the ill-fitting suit? What was he doing? Caleb reached the stage and looked at Lena. May I? Lena stared at him, bewildered. May you what? May I say something? It's relevant, I promise. Every instinct told Lena to refuse, to handle this herself, to not let a stranger, however kind, fight her battles. But something in Caleb's steady gaze made her step aside. He took the microphone with the same care he probably used to handle delicate engine parts. Then he began speaking, in fluent, formal Japanese. The shock that went through the ballroom was electric. Lena's own surprise must have shown on her face because Caleb met her eyes and offered a small, apologetic smile before continuing. He spoke for nearly a minute, his pronunciation precise, his grammar formal, his tone carrying weight and respect that the English language often stripped away. Lena understood every word, and with each sentence, something enormous shifted in her chest. Then Caleb switched back to English. For those who don't speak Japanese, I just told Miss Morimoto that I owed her more than I could ever repay, and that watching people in this room judge her without knowing her story was hard to witness in silence. He turned to face the audience. My name is Caleb Turner. 8 years ago, I was a Navy engineer stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. My wife Sarah was with me, and we'd just learned she was pregnant with our daughter Mia. He paused, gathering himself. We were happy, terrified but happy. Then Sarah had the aneurysm. She collapsed in our apartment, and I didn't speak enough Japanese to tell the emergency responders what was happening. The ambulance came, but at the hospital, the communication barriers were... His voice cracked slightly. They were catastrophic. The doctors couldn't get a full medical history. I couldn't explain Sarah's symptoms clearly. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong because we couldn't understand each other well enough, fast enough. Lena's hand went to her mouth. She remembered this. Not Caleb specifically, but the incident. The Naval Hospital's desperate call to Quantum Bridge's Tokyo office. The emergency deployment of their medical translation AI. The frantic work to help doctors and a terrified American serviceman communicate across a language barrier while a woman's life hung in the balance. Sarah didn't make it, Caleb continued, his voice steady despite the pain etched into every word. The doctors said she probably wouldn't have survived even with perfect communication. The damage was too severe, but they couldn't say that with certainty. And I couldn't shake the feeling that if we'd understood each other better, if the translation hadn't been so clumsy and slow, maybe... He stopped, shaking his head. I was a wreck. Angry at everyone and everything. Angry at Japan for being foreign. Angry at myself for not learning the language better. Angry at a system that put my wife in danger because two cultures couldn't talk to each other properly. Caleb's eyes found Lena's. And then someone from Quantum Bridge Technologies showed up at the hospital. A young woman, probably mid-20s, who'd driven from Tokyo at 2 a.m. with a prototype translation system. Lena remembered her now. Yuki Tanaka, one of Quantum Bridge's first employees, brilliant and compassionate and absolutely relentless when it came to making their technology work. She stayed with me for 3 days, Caleb said. Helped me communicate with doctors, helped me understand Sarah's autopsy report, helped me navigate the paperwork to bring Sarah's body home. She didn't have to do any of that. Quantum Bridge didn't have to do any of that. But this woman told me her boss had started the company specifically to prevent tragedies like mine, to make sure people didn't die or suffer because cultures couldn't talk to each other. He turned back to the audience. That boss was Lina Morimoto. She was 24 years old at the time, running a startup out of a converted warehouse with 6 employees and more idealism than capital. And when she heard about an American serviceman losing his wife partly because of communication failures, she didn't see it as a market opportunity. She saw it as exactly the problem she'd started her company to solve. Caleb's voice strengthened. Ms. Morimoto's team stayed in touch with me, helped me file claims with the Navy, helped me reintegrate when I came back to the States. When I struggled to find work because my experience was all overseas, Quantum Bridge hired me as a consultant to help them understand how military families experience cross-cultural communication barriers. They paid me fair wages when I desperately needed money to take care of my newborn daughter. They gave me purpose when I had none. Someone near the front was crying. Lina could see several others blinking hard. So when Mr. Bradford asks why Miss Morimoto stays in America if she finds it unwelcoming, Caleb said, his tone hardening slightly, I'd like to offer a different question. Why does America keep questioning the loyalty and gratitude of people who've given everything to make this country better? Who've built companies that save lives, who've created jobs, who've donated millions to causes they believe in? He looked directly at Bradford. Miss Morimoto didn't refuse to adapt. She adapted so completely that she built a technology that helps entire cultures adapt to each other. She didn't reject American values. She embodied the best of them. Innovation, hard work, helping people who need it. The fact that she did all this while looking different and sounding different doesn't make her less American. It makes the people who can't see past those differences less American. The silence was deafening. Bradford's face had gone red. Now see here. I'm not finished. Caleb's voice was quiet but absolute. You asked if fitting in is a choice. You're right. It is. But the choice isn't whether people like Miss Morimoto should change who they are to make the rest of us comfortable. The choice is whether we're secure enough in ourselves to let people be different without seeing that difference as a threat. He stepped back from the microphone and looked at Lina. I'm sorry if I overstepped, but someone needed to say it. Lina couldn't speak, couldn't move. This mechanic, this single father who'd been seated at her table by accident, had just defended her with more passion and precision than any lawyer or PR team ever had. And he'd done it in her mother's language, speaking words of respect and debt that English couldn't quite capture. The applause started slowly. One person, then another, then a wave that built until it filled the ballroom. Not everyone joined in. Bradford sat with his arms crossed and several others looked distinctly uncomfortable, but enough people stood that the message was clear. Had changed the narrative. Marcus Chen rushed to the podium, his professional smile firmly in place despite the obvious chaos. Well, that was certainly, unexpected. Let's thank both Miss Morimoto and Mr. Turner for their candor. More applause. Lina descended from the stage on shaking legs, Caleb at her side. Where did you learn Japanese? She whispered. 4 years in Yokosuka. I was terrible at first, but after Sarah died, I needed to understand what the doctors had really said. So I studied. Every night after Mia went to bed, I studied. It became important to me, understanding the culture that had been around my wife when she died, understanding the people who tried to save her. You never told me your wife died in Japan. You never asked. His smile was gentle. And I wasn't sure how to bring up, hey, your company's technology might have saved my marriage if it had existed 5 years earlier without sounding like I was guilting you. They reached table 12. Mia launched herself at her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. Daddy, that was so cool. You sounded like the people in my anime shows. Thanks, sweetheart. And you made that mean man stop being mean to Lina. Caleb crouched to his daughter's level. Mr. Bradford wasn't trying to be mean exactly. He just didn't understand. Some people have lived their whole lives having the world adjust to them, so they can't imagine what it's like to do all the adjusting yourself. That's not fair. No, it's not. But that's why we speak up when we can. Mia turned to Lina. Are you okay? You look like you might cry. Lina blinked rapidly. I'm fine. It's okay to cry when people are nice to you. Daddy says that's called happy tears. Before Lina could respond, a woman approached their table. Elizabeth Hamilton, one of the foundation board members. Lena recognized her from the donor materials. Old San Francisco family, significant influence, generally considered progressive for her generation. Ms. Morimoto, Mr. Turner, I wanted to apologize. Elizabeth's cultured voice carried genuine embarrassment. Thomas Bradford doesn't speak for the entire board, and his questions were inappropriate. They were honest, Lena said quietly. That's more than most people manage. Honest doesn't excuse cruel. And they weren't even accurate. You've been more than generous to this foundation, and your company's work has measurable, positive impact. Elizabeth glanced at Caleb. I wasn't aware of Quantum Bridge's history with military families. That's remarkable. It's one of many things Ms. Morimoto doesn't publicize, Caleb said, which is exactly why people make assumptions. Elizabeth nodded slowly. You're right. We should have done better research, known more about who we were honoring tonight. She turned back to Lena. Would you be willing to serve on our scholarship selection committee? We could use someone who truly understands what these students face. Lena hesitated. Committee work meant meetings, meant more evenings like this, meant exposing herself to more judgment and more careful navigation of social dynamics she'd never quite mastered. But it also meant influence, control over who received opportunities, the chance to make sure the selection process didn't replicate the same barriers she'd faced. I'll consider it, Lena said. That's all I ask. Elizabeth smiled and moved on to other tables. As the dinner service concluded, people began circulating again, and something had shifted. Several guests approached table 12, some to apologize for Bradford's comments, some to ask questions about Quantum Bridge's technology, some simply to acknowledge Lena in ways they hadn't before. A young woman, probably mid-20s, stopped by. Miss Morimoto? I'm Diana Lee. My parents immigrated from Taiwan. Everything you said about feeling foreign, I felt that. I still feel it, even though I was born here. Thank you for saying it out loud. Thank you for listening, Lena replied. An older gentleman, distinguished and uncomfortable, cleared his throat. Miss Morimoto? William Chen, no relation to Marcus. I owe you an apology. I've been on the foundation board for 12 years. And I'm ashamed to say I made assumptions about you based on very limited interaction. That was wrong. We all make assumptions, Lena said carefully. Yes, but some of us should know better. My parents came through Angel Island in the 40s. They faced the same prejudices you described. I thought I'd risen above that mentality, but tonight showed me I've just been perpetuating it in more polite language. The conversations continued. Not everyone approached. Bradford and his circle left early, their displeasure evident. But enough people engaged that Lena found herself actually talking at a social event instead of simply enduring it. And through it all, Caleb and Mia remained anchors. Caleb deflected overly personal questions, gently redirected conversations when he sensed Lena becoming overwhelmed, and somehow managed to make her laugh with quiet observations about the absurdity of certain social rituals. That woman just told you her colonoscopy results, he murmured at one point. Is that normal rich people conversation? Surprisingly, yes, Lena whispered back. They call it radical vulnerability. I call it oversharing. That too. Eventually, the crowd began to thin. Parents with young children left first, then the older donors, until only the die-hard socializers remained nursing cocktails at the bar. We should go, Caleb said, noting Mia's drooping eyelids. It's way past someone's bedtime. Mine? Mia asked hopefully. Yes, yours. Lena stood when they did, surprised by how reluctant she felt to watch them leave. Thank you, she said quietly, for tonight, for all of it. We didn't do anything except be decent to you, Caleb replied, which is a pretty low bar. It's higher than you think. They looked at each other for a long moment. This mechanic and this CEO, separated by wealth and circumstance, but connected by something neither quite understood yet. Can we see you again? Mia asked, covering a yawn with her small hand. Lena's heart clenched. I'd like that. We could show you the butterfly garden at my school. Mia, Ms. Morimoto is very busy. Actually, Lena interrupted, surprising herself, I'd love to see it. Caleb's eyebrows rose. Really? Really, if the offer stands. Stands, always. He pulled out his phone. Can we exchange numbers unless that's weird? Is that weird? I don't actually know the protocol for befriending billionaires. There is no protocol, Lena said, which is exactly why it never happens. They exchanged contact information, and Lena watched them leave, Caleb's hand on Mia's shoulder, guiding her through the thinning crowd toward the exit. Just before they disappeared, Mia turned and waved, her small hand a bright spot of yellow in the dim ballroom. Lena waved back. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And it terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her Pacific Heights penthouse, the city lights spreading below her like scattered diamonds, and replayed every moment of the evening. The weight of Caleb's words in Japanese, the feeling of Mia's small hand in hers, the way the room had shifted from judgment to something that almost resembled respect. Her phone sat on the glass coffee table, Caleb's number glowing in her recent contacts. She'd picked it up 3 times already, typed messages, deleted them. What did you say to someone who defended you when no one else would? Thank you felt insufficient. The carefully constructed emails she drafted felt too formal, too much like the corporate armor she'd worn for so long. Finally, at 2 a.m, she sent something simple. Thank you for tonight. You didn't have to do what you did. The response came faster than she expected. Couldn't sleep either? Lena smiled despite herself. Apparently not. Mia's been asleep for hours. She talked about you the whole drive home, about how pretty you are and how sad you looked until people started being nice. She notices a lot for someone so young. Too much sometimes. She told me I should ask you on a date. Lena's breath caught. She stared at those words for a long moment, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. What did you tell her? That adults are more complicated than 8-year-olds understand. That sometimes people are better as friends. Is that what you believe? The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I don't know what I believe yet, but I know I'd like to see you again. Actually see you not just at formal events where you have to perform. I don't perform well. You performed perfectly tonight. That's the problem. Lena understood what he meant. The careful control, the measured responses, the way she'd armored herself against Bradford's attack until Caleb had stripped that armor away with his honesty. The Butterfly Garden invitation, she typed. Does it still stand? Absolutely. Mia has soccer practice tomorrow at 3, but we're free Saturday morning if you are. Saturday. Lena mentally reviewed her schedule, conference calls with Tokyo, board meeting prep, the endless emails that accumulated whenever she stepped away from her laptop. She could make excuses. Should make excuses. This was already becoming complicated in ways she couldn't afford. Saturday work she sent before she could reconsider. Really? I half expected you to ghost me once you remembered you're a billionaire and I fix motorcycles for a living. The fact that you think wealth determines compatibility tells me you don't actually believe it does. Fair point. 9 a.m., Jefferson Elementary on Hayes Street. I'll be there. Lena set down her phone and realized she was smiling. Actually smiling, alone in her apartment at 2 a.m, at the prospect of visiting an elementary school butterfly garden with a mechanic and his daughter. Her assistant would think she'd lost her mind. Her board would question her priorities. But for the first time in years, Lena didn't care what anyone else thought. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in fog. Typical for San Francisco in late spring. Lena dressed carefully. Not the designer clothes she wore to business meetings, but nice jeans and a cashmere sweater that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but looked casual enough not to scream wealth. She left her hair down instead of in its usual severe bun. Minimal makeup. No jewelry except the simple watch her father had given her when she'd started Quantum Bridge. She almost looked like a regular person. Almost. Jefferson Elementary sat in a working-class neighborhood Lena rarely visited, the kind of area where houses were small and close together, where children's bikes littered front yards, where people knew their neighbors' names. The school itself was older, the paint chipping in places. The playground equipment showing its age, but clearly well-loved and well-used. Caleb and Mia waited by the front gate. Mia wore overalls covered in dirt stains and held a small gardening trowel like a trophy. Caleb looked more comfortable than he had at the gala. Faded jeans, a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, work boots that had clearly seen actual work. You came! Mia launched herself at Lena with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of childhood. Lena caught her, surprised by the hug, even more surprised by how naturally she returned it. I promised, didn't I? Grown-ups promise things all the time and don't do them. Mia, Caleb said gently. Well, they do. Ms. Patterson promised we'd go to the Science Museum last year and we never went. Ms. Patterson's funding got cut, Caleb explained to Lena. School budget issues. Lena filed that information away, already thinking about anonymous donations and strategic philanthropy, then stopped herself. Not everything had to be solved with money. Come see the garden. Mia grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her through the gate. We planted it in the fall and now everything's blooming and there are actual butterflies. The garden was tucked behind the school cafeteria, a small plot maybe 20 feet square that had been transformed into a riot of color. Purple butterfly bushes, bright orange Mexican sunflowers, pink coneflowers, yellow coreopsis. All the plants Lena vaguely remembered reading attracted pollinators. A few rough wooden benches sat at the edges. Hand-painted signs identified each plant species in children's careful printing. And butterflies, dozens of them, flitting between blooms in the morning sun that was just starting to burn through the fog. It's beautiful, Lena said, and meant it. Mrs. Chen helped us design it, Mia explained, leading Lena to a corner where several chrysalises hung from a small wooden structure. That's our classroom teacher. She said gardens are living science experiments. See those? Those are monarchs. They'll hatch soon, and then they'll fly all the way to Mexico. That's a long journey for something so small. That's what makes it amazing. They're tiny, but they're so strong. Mia looked up at Lena with those serious eyes. Mrs. Chen says people are like that too. Sometimes the things that make us seem small or weak are actually what make us strong enough to do impossible things. Caleb, standing a few feet away, caught Lena's eye and shrugged as if to say, I don't know where she gets this stuff. But Lena understood. This child, who'd lost her mother before she was old enough to remember her face, who was being raised by a single father who worked long hours just to keep them housed and fed, had developed a philosophy of resilience wrapped in butterfly metaphors. It was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Can I tell you a secret? Mia whispered conspiratorially. Of course. I named one of the caterpillars after you. The one over there, see? She pointed to a chrysalis hanging slightly apart from the others. She was by herself a lot. The other caterpillars stayed together, but she was always separate. But she's going to be so beautiful when she comes out. I just know it. Lena's throat tightened. That's very sweet. Do you want to help us plant some new flowers? Mrs. Chen said we could expand the garden if we had volunteers. I've never gardened before. That's okay. We'll teach you. Right, Daddy? Caleb walked over with a smile that transformed his whole face. I think we can manage that. Fair warning, though, gardening is messy work. Those are nice clothes. They'll wash. Spoken like someone who doesn't do their own laundry. Lena laughed, startled by his directness. I have a housekeeper. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Honesty, I like it. Caleb handed her a pair of gardening gloves that had seen better days. Come on, Billionaire. Let's see if you can get dirt under your fingernails. For the next 2 hours, Lena did something she'd never done in her entire life. She worked with her hands for no purpose except the simple pleasure of creating something. Mia directed them like a tiny foreman, explaining which flowers needed more sun, which preferred shade, how deep to plant each root ball. Caleb worked beside Lena, patient and encouraging when she struggled with the unfamiliar tasks. You're thinking too hard, he said at one point, watching her carefully measure the distance between plants with mathematical precision. There's a recommended spacing. It's a garden, not a circuit board. The plants will figure it out. But the optimal growth patterns, Lena. He put his dirt-covered hand over hers, stopping her frantic measuring. Let it be imperfect. Let it be messy. Let it just be. Their eyes met, and Lena realized he wasn't just talking about gardening. He was talking about her need to control everything, to calculate every variable, to never allow space for organic growth or beautiful chaos. She set down the measuring tape and planted the next flower by feel instead of numbers. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Around 11, Mrs. Chen appeared, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who lit up when she saw Mia. And who do we have helping today? This is my friend Lena, Mia announced, She's never gardened before, but she's learning really fast. Any friend of Mia's is welcome here. Mrs. Chen assessed Lena with the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent decades reading children and adults alike. You look familiar. Lena Morimoto, Lena said, expecting the shift in demeanor, the sudden calculation of her worth, but Mrs. Chen just nodded. Ah, Quantum Bridge. My nephew works in your Seattle office, says it's the best company he's ever worked for. Good benefits? Actually values work-life balance. We try. Trying is more than most tech companies manage. Mrs. Chen gestured at the expanded garden. This looks wonderful. Thank you for volunteering your Saturday. It's been educational. I imagine it has. The knowing look in Mrs. Chen's eyes suggested she understood exactly what kind of education Lena was receiving, and it had nothing to do with horticulture. They worked until noon, when Mia's energy finally flagged and Caleb declared it was lunchtime. Lena expected them to part ways then, to return to their separate worlds now that the shared project was complete. But Mia had other ideas. Can Lena come to lunch with us? Please, Daddy? We're just going to the taco truck, but she can come, right? Caleb looked at Lena apologetically. You don't have to... I'd like to, Lena interrupted, if that's okay. It's a taco truck, not a Michelin-starred restaurant. I've eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants. They're overrated. Caleb's grin was genuine. Now I know you're lying. Only partially. The taco truck, Maria's Cocina, sat 3 blocks from the school, its painted exterior depicting bright flowers and smiling suns. A line of customers waited patiently, drawn by smells that made Lena's stomach growl despite her usual careful eating habits. Best carnitas in the city, Caleb said. Maria's been parking this truck here for 15 years. She remembers Mia from when she was in a stroller. When they reached the window, a round-faced woman with warm eyes leaned out. Caleb, Mija. And who is this? This is our friend Lena, Mia announced. Well, any friend of yours deserves my best tacos. What can I get you, Lena? Lena looked at the menu board, suddenly aware of how out of her depth she was. I don't actually know. What do you recommend? You trust me? Yes? Good answer. Maria disappeared into the truck, and 10 minutes later they sat at a nearby picnic table with plates piled high with tacos that bore no resemblance to the carefully deconstructed Mexican fusion Lena occasionally ate at expensive restaurants. These were real, messy, perfect. This is incredible, Lena said after her first bite. Told you. Caleb watched her with obvious amusement. You've got salsa on your cheek. Lena reached for a napkin, suddenly self-conscious, but Mia giggled. It's okay. Good food is supposed to be messy. That's how you know it's good. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching people pass by. Families, couples, elderly men, playing chess at a nearby table. This was a neighborhood, Lena realized. Not just a collection of houses, but an actual community where people knew each other, where a taco truck could become an institution, where a child could walk to school and feel safe. She'd lived in San Francisco for over 20 years and had never experienced anything like it. Can I ask you something? Caleb said eventually. And you can tell me it's none of my business. Ask. What you said at the gala about being alone, about people finding you difficult to approach, is that really how you feel? Or is it how you've decided to feel because it's easier than being disappointed? Lena set down her taco, the question hitting harder than she'd expected. That's fairly perceptive for someone who's known me for 3 days. I'm a mechanic. I spend my days diagnosing problems. Sometimes the issue isn't the obvious thing. It's the workaround someone built that's actually causing more damage than the original problem. You're comparing me to a broken engine? I'm comparing your isolation to a defense mechanism that might have outlived its usefulness. Lena looked away, watching a butterfly land on the edge of their table. When I was younger, I tried very hard to connect with people, to make friends, to date, to build the kind of social life everyone else seemed to have naturally. But every interaction required so much translation, not just language, but cultural context, emotional expression, every tiny thing. And even when I did everything right, I was still different, still foreign, still the one who required extra effort. So you stopped trying. I stopped expecting people to meet me halfway. It was exhausting, always being the one to adapt, to explain, to prove I was worth the extra work. She met his eyes. Building Quantum Bridge gave me purpose that didn't require social approval. Creating technology that solved communication problems felt more achievable than solving my own. But you're lonely. It wasn't a question. Lena didn't bother denying it. Yeah, she said quietly. I'm lonely. I have colleagues, employees, business associates. But friends? People who know me, not my company or my bank account or my ability to fund their initiatives. She shook her head. No. Until Mia invited you to sit with us. Until Mia saw me when no one else did. Mia, who'd been coloring on a napkin with crayons Maria had provided, looked up. I don't understand why people don't see you. You're right there. Sometimes being visible and being seen are different things, Lena said. That's sad. Yes, it is. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I tell you what I see? Lena's heart hammered. Okay. I see someone who's built extraordinary things from nothing, who's helped countless people, including my family, without seeking recognition or gratitude. Someone who's carried the weight of being different for so long that it's become armor. He paused. But I also see someone who smiles when she thinks no one's watching, who's gentle with children even though she's nervous around them, who gardens with mathematical precision because chaos makes her uncomfortable, but who's willing to try anyway when someone asks her to trust the process. Lena's eyes stung. You've known me for 3 days. Sometimes 3 days of honesty matters more than years of performance. They looked at each other across the picnic table, and something fundamental shifted. This wasn't just unlikely friendship anymore. This was something more complicated, more dangerous, more real. Mia broke the moment by announcing she needed to use the bathroom. Caleb walked her to the nearby public restroom, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts and her rapidly beating heart. When they returned, Caleb's phone was ringing. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. I'm sorry, I need to take this. Work thing. He stepped away and Lena heard fragments of conversation. Can't come in today, it's Saturday. And emergency repair can wait until Monday. And finally, reluctantly, yeah, okay, I'll be there in an hour. When he returned to the table, frustration creased his forehead. I'm really sorry. The shop owner called. One of our regular clients has a breakdown on Highway 101, needs immediate pickup and repair. Apparently I'm the only one available. Don't apologize, it's your job. It's my Saturday, which I promised Mia we'd spend together. Mia tugged his sleeve. It's okay, Daddy. Mrs. Rodriguez said I could come over and play with Sophia any time. Mrs. Rodriguez has her own kids to watch. I can't just... Caleb stopped, visibly torn between professional obligation and parental responsibility. I could stay with her, Lena heard herself say. Both Caleb and Mia stared at her. I mean, if that's appropriate. If you're comfortable with that. We could go back to the garden, or... Lena trailed off, suddenly uncertain. I'm sorry, that was presumptuous. You barely know me. You're a billionaire CEO, Caleb said slowly, and you're offering to babysit my daughter so I can fix a broken-down Harley. When you say it like that, it sounds absurd. It is absurd, but Caleb was smiling. Are you sure? It might be a few hours. I have nowhere else to be. That wasn't entirely true. Lena had a dozen places she could be, 100 things she should be doing, but none of them mattered as much as this strange, unexpected connection with people who saw her as human instead of a commodity. Okay, Caleb said. Okay. But Mia, you have to promise to be good. No testing boundaries just because it's Lena instead of me. I promise. Caleb looked at Lena, something vulnerable in his expression. Thank you. Really. This means more than you know. I'm beginning to understand that, Lena said quietly. He left reluctantly, with multiple backward glances and repeated phone numbers and emergency contacts that Lena assured him she already had. Then it was just Lena and Mia, standing on a San Francisco sidewalk, two people separated by age and experience, but connected by something neither quite understood. What do you want to do? Lena asked. Mia thought seriously about this. Can we go to the library? I need to return a book, and I want to show you my favorite section. The library, not a demand for expensive entertainment or exclusive experiences. Just a library. I'd love that, Lena said. The branch library was small and slightly shabby, the kind of neighborhood institution that survived on limited funding and the dedication of staff who genuinely loved books. Mia navigated it like a seasoned explorer, returning her book at the front desk, greeting the librarian by name, then leading Lena to the children's section with obvious pride. "This is where all the science books are," she announced, gesturing at a shelf, "and this is where the stories are. But my favorite is this corner." She pulled Lena to a window seat overlooking a small garden. "Because you can read and watch the birds at the same time." They settled into the window seat and Mia pulled out 3 books about butterflies, ocean life, and space exploration. "Will you read to me? Daddy's good at reading, but he does all the voices wrong. You seem like you'd be more serious." "I don't know if that's a compliment." "It is. Sometimes serious is better. It means you respect the information." For the next hour, Lena read about metamorphosis and migration patterns, about ocean currents and bioluminescence, about stars and galaxies, and the incomprehensible vastness of space. Mia listened with fierce attention, interrupting occasionally to ask questions that revealed a sharp, curious mind. "Do you think butterflies know they're going to change?" Mia asked at one point. "Like, when they're still caterpillars, do they understand what's coming?" "I don't know. The science says it's instinct, not conscious choice." "But what do you think? Not what scientists think. What do you think?" Lena paused, considering. "I think maybe there's a moment where they feel something changing, where the caterpillar life doesn't fit anymore, and they have to trust that whatever comes next will be worth the transformation. Even if it's scary?" "Especially if it's scary. The best changes usually are." Mia nodded solemnly. "Is that what's happening to you? A transformation?" "What makes you think I'm transforming?" "Because you look different than you did at the fancy party. Less like you're wearing a costume. More like you're just you." Out of the mouths of children, Lena thought. This 8-year-old saw what business analysts and journalists and board members never had. The performance versus the person. The armor versus the vulnerable human underneath. "Maybe I am," Lena admitted. "I'm not sure yet what I'm transforming into." "That's okay. The caterpillar doesn't know either. It just has to trust." They read until the afternoon light began to slant golden through the windows. Other children came and went, parents browsing the stacks, the librarian quietly reshelving books. It was peaceful in a way Lena's life rarely was. No agenda, no urgency, just the simple pleasure of sharing stories with a child who treated knowledge like treasure. Caleb texted around 4. "Repair taking longer than expected." "You doing okay?" "We're at the library," Lena replied. "Take your time." "The library." "Of course, Mia's favorite place after the garden." "I can see why." "Thank you. Seriously, I owe you. You don't owe me anything." But even as she sent it, Lena knew that wasn't quite true. They were building something between them, not a debt exactly, but a reciprocity. A mutual recognition of worth that had nothing to do with money or status, and everything to do with simply showing up for each other. "Is that Daddy?" Mia asked. "Yes, he'll be a while longer." "That's okay. Can we look at the cookbooks? I want to learn to make something special." "For what occasion?" "For you. To say thank you for spending time with us. I think you don't get thanked enough." Lena's vision blurred. This child, who had so little compared to what Lena's wealth could provide, wanted to thank her with something homemade and heartfelt. "You don't need to thank me," Lena managed. "I know I don't need to. I want to. There's a difference." They spent another hour browsing cookbooks, with Mia selecting an ambitious recipe for homemade chocolate chip cookies. "Daddy says cookies make everything better, even sad things." "Does he?" "Yep. When Mommy died, people brought us a lot of cookies. Daddy said it was because when words don't work, sweetness does." Lena helped Mia check out the cookbook, and they walked slowly back toward Jefferson Elementary, where Caleb would pick them up. The fog had burned off completely, leaving one of those perfect San Francisco afternoons where the light turned everything golden and the city felt almost magical. "Can I tell you a secret?" Mia asked as they walked. "Another one?" I think Daddy likes you, like, really likes you, not just friend likes you. Lena's heart stuttered. Mia, I know adults think kids don't notice things, but we do. We notice everything. And Daddy smiles different when he talks about you. Like the smile goes all the way to his eyes instead of just his mouth. That doesn't necessarily mean, and you like him too, I can tell. I barely know him. You knew him enough to spend your whole Saturday with us instead of doing billionaire things. Lena couldn't argue with that logic. Your father and I are very different people, Mia. Different worlds, different lives. So, the butterflies in our garden come from all over. Different species, different colors, different sizes. But they all live in the same garden because they need the same things: sunshine and flowers and a safe place to land. Mia looked up at her with those two wise eyes. Maybe people are like that too. Before Lena could respond, Caleb's truck pulled up to the curb. A well-maintained but clearly aging Ford with tools visible in the bed. He climbed out, still in his work clothes, grease on his hands despite obviously having tried to clean them. I'm so sorry, he started. That took way longer than... It's fine, Lena assured him. We had a lovely time. We went to the library and read about butterflies and space, and we got a cookbook so I can make cookies for Lena. Mia held up her prize. Caleb's expression softened as he looked at his daughter, then at Lena. You really are a saint. I'm really not. You spent 6 hours with an 8-year-old. Trust me, you qualify. It wasn't a sacrifice, Caleb. I enjoyed it. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what this day had meant, of boundaries crossed and walls lowered in the tentative beginning of something neither was quite ready to name. Can Lena come to our house for dinner? Mia asked. Please, I want to start practicing the cookies. Mia, I'm sure Lena has plans. I don't, Lena said quietly. I really don't. Caleb searched her face. You don't have to. I know, I want to. And she did. More than she'd wanted anything in years. Caleb's apartment was nothing like Lena's penthouse. It sat above a garage in the Sunset District, accessed by an exterior staircase that creaked under their feet. The space was small, maybe 800 square feet, with worn hardwood floors and furniture that had clearly been collected over years from thrift stores and curbside finds. But it was clean, organized, and filled with evidence of the life happening within it. Mia's artwork covered the refrigerator. Framed photos lined the walls, most featuring a laughing woman with dark hair who must have been Sarah. Books stacked on every available surface, some children's stories, some automotive manuals, some novels with cracked spines that suggested multiple readings. It was a home, not a showcase, not an investment property, but an actual home where people lived and loved and built memories from ordinary moments. I know it's not much, Caleb said, suddenly self-conscious as he watched Lena take it all in. The garage owner lets me rent it cheap because I maintain all his vehicles. It's not Pacific Heights, but it's ours. It's perfect, Lena said, and meant it. There was something in this space that her expensive penthouse had never achieved. Warmth, history, the sense that the walls themselves remembered laughter. Mia had already kicked off her shoes and disappeared into what must be her bedroom, returning with an apron that declared her Daddy's little helper. Do you have an apron, Lena? I don't think I've ever owned an apron. You can borrow Daddy's, but it might be too big. The apron was indeed too big, designed for Caleb's broad shoulders and hanging loose on Lena's smaller frame. Caleb helped her tie it, his fingers brushing the small of her back, and Lena felt electricity shoot through her at the simple contact. Sorry, he murmured, stepping back. Didn't mean to. It's fine. Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. Thank you. They assembled ingredients on the small kitchen counter: flour, sugar, butter, chocolate chips. Mia directed operations with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign, consulting her library cookbook and measuring everything with precise care. Daddy, you need to cream the butter and sugar together. The book says it should be fluffy. I know how to cream butter, sweetheart. I've made these cookies before. But Lena hasn't. We have to teach her properly. Caleb caught Lena's eye and smiled. You heard the boss. Proper technique only. For the next hour, Lena learned how to make chocolate chip cookies from scratch. She measured flour incorrectly and had to start over. She overmixed the dough until Caleb gently stilled her hand and showed her how to fold ingredients together instead of beating them into submission. She dropped an egg on the floor, and instead of mortification, there was only Mia's giggles and Caleb's patient cleanup. "You're very bad at this," Mia observed cheerfully. "Mia!" Caleb's tone carried warning. "What? She is? But that's okay. Everyone's bad at things before they're good at them. That's what you always tell me." "Your father is very wise," Lena said, watching Caleb's ears turn slightly red. "He tries." Mia carefully placed dough balls on the baking sheet with the focus of a surgeon. "Lena, do you know how to do anything normal? Like, not billionaire things. Regular people things." "Mia, that's rude." "No, it's a fair question." Lena considered. "I can solve complex differential equations. I can code in 7 programming languages. I can negotiate million-dollar contracts in 3 languages." She paused. "But I can't cook. I've never done my own laundry, and until today, I'd never planted a flower or helped a child with homework. So no, I don't know many normal things." "That's sad." "Yeah," Lena agreed quietly. "It kind of is." Caleb was watching her with that steady gaze that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. "It's never too late to learn. Is that what this is? Remedial life skills for the emotionally stunted billionaire?" "This is friendship," Caleb said simply. "People teaching each other things they know. You could probably teach me a lot about technology and business strategy. I can teach you about cookies and gardening and how to change your own oil. I'm not sure those skills translate to my world. Maybe the problem is you need a bigger world." The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Lena's world had narrowed over the years to Quantum Bridge and the endless pursuit of innovation and market dominance. Everything else, relationships, hobbies, simple pleasures, had been sacrificed to that singular focus. The timer buzzed. Mia carefully removed the cookies from the oven with Caleb's help, and the apartment filled with the smell of butter and chocolate and something that felt dangerously close to belonging. While the cookies cooled, Caleb started preparing dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and marinara sauce from a jar, garlic bread, a simple salad. But he moved through the small kitchen with efficient grace, and Lena found herself watching the way his hands worked, competent and sure. "You can sit," he said without turning around. "You don't have to hover." "I like watching you work." The words came out before Lena could filter them, more honest than she'd intended. Caleb's hand stilled for a moment, then resumed chopping garlic. "It's just pasta," he said quietly. "It's not about the pasta." He looked at her then, really looked, and Lena saw her own confusion reflected back. This thing growing between them defied logic. They'd known each other less than a week. They came from completely different worlds. By every rational measure, this shouldn't work. But rationality had never accounted for the way her heart lifted when Mia laughed, or the warmth that spread through her chest when Caleb smiled, or the strange sense of homecoming she felt in this modest apartment above a garage. "Set the table?" Caleb asked, his voice rough. "I don't know where anything is." Plates in the cabinet above the sink, silverware in the drawer by the stove, glasses next to the plates. Lena set 3 places at the small dining table, which was really just a repurposed door balanced on sawhorses, but somehow felt more substantial than the designer furniture in her penthouse. Mia appeared with paper napkins folded into elaborate shapes, swans, she explained, that she'd learned from a YouTube video. They sat down to dinner as the sun set over the Pacific, visible through the apartment's western window. The food was simple but good, the conversation easy, flowing naturally from Mia's school projects to Caleb's work stories to Lena's careful descriptions of the less technical aspects of running a global company. "Do you like being a boss?" Mia asked, twirling spaghetti on her fork with mixed success. "Sometimes. It's complicated." "How is it complicated?" "Because being responsible for thousands of people's livelihoods is heavy. Every decision I make affects families, whether someone can pay their rent, send their kids to college, afford health care. That weight never goes away." "But you make good decisions, right? You help people?" "I try. But sometimes helping some people means difficult choices that hurt others. Sometimes there's no perfect answer, just the least harmful option." Caleb's expression had turned thoughtful. I never thought about it that way. You read about tech CEOs in the news, and they seem like they're playing with monopoly money, not people's actual lives. Some of them are. Some of them only see spreadsheets and profit margins. But my parents worked 3 jobs between them to give me opportunities. I remember what it's like when every dollar matters, when losing a job means losing everything. I can't forget that, even now. Do you talk to your parents a lot? Mia asked. Lena's chest tightened. Not as much as I should. They're still in Sacramento. My father's retired now, and my mother volunteers at the community center. They're proud of what I've built, but I think they're also sad that I'm alone. They want you to get married? Mia, that's personal, Caleb started. It's okay. Lena met Mia's curious gaze. Yes, they do. In their generation, in Japanese culture, family is everything. A successful career without a family to share it with is seen as incomplete. They worry I'm isolated. Are you? Yes, Lena admitted. But I didn't know how isolated until I met you two. I'd convinced myself that loneliness was just the price of success, that meaningful connection wasn't possible for someone like me, and then an 8-year-old girl invited me to sit at her table and everything I'd told myself started to fall apart. Mia smiled, sauce on her chin. I'm glad I invited you. So am I. After dinner, they ate warm cookies with cold milk while Mia talked about her upcoming science fair project. She wanted to build a model showing how different butterfly species migrated, with string and construction paper and ambitions that far exceeded her resources. We can work on it together, Caleb said. I'm pretty good with models. Can Lena help too? Both of them looked at Lena, who found herself nodding before she'd consciously decided. If you want me to, yes. Really? You're not too busy? I can make time. The words felt revolutionary. Lena Morimoto, who scheduled every 15 minutes of her day months in advance, who measured productivity in decimal points and efficiency metrics, was committing to help an 8-year-old build a science fair project. Her board would be appalled. Her assistant would have an aneurysm trying to fit it into her calendar. Lena didn't care. Eventually, Mia's energy flagged. She yawned through her last cookie, and Caleb declared bedtime. There was the usual negotiation, 5 more minutes, just one more story, but finally Mia brushed her teeth and changed into pajamas covered in stars. Will you tell me a story? She asked Lena. Daddy always does, but maybe you know different ones. Lena perched on the edge of Mia's bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and butterfly posters and the accumulated treasures of childhood. I don't know many children's stories. Then tell me a grown-up story, but make it not scary. So Lena told her about the early days of Quantum Bridge, about working in a converted warehouse with a team of 6 people who believed they could change how the world communicated. She told her about the first time their system successfully translated a complex medical conversation between doctors who spoke different languages, potentially saving a patient's life. She told her about failure and persistence and the strange magic of building something from nothing but determination and hope. Mia listened with drowsy attention, her eyelids growing heavy. That's a good story, she murmured. You're like a butterfly too. You built something beautiful from almost nothing. I never thought of it that way. Daddy says the best things come from people who refuse to give up, even when it's hard, even when everyone says it's impossible. Mia's eyes drifted closed. I think you're one of those people. Within minutes, she was asleep. Lena sat there for a long moment, watching this child breathe, overwhelmed by tenderness for someone she'd known less than a week. When she finally emerged from Mia's room, she found Caleb on the small balcony that overlooked the street, nursing a beer and staring at the darkening sky. She asleep? He asked without turning. Yes. She's remarkable, Caleb. You've done an amazing job with her. I've done my best. Some days that feels like enough. Other days... He trailed off, taking a long drink. Lena joined him on the balcony, accepting the beer he offered from a small cooler. They stood in comfortable silence, watching neighbors come home from work, lights flickering on in windows, the ordinary rhythm of urban life. Can I ask you something? Caleb said eventually. Of course. Why are you really here? And don't say it's because Mia invited you. There's something else. Something that made you say yes when you could have, should have said no. Lena considered lying, deflecting, maintaining the professional distance that had protected her for so long. But this man had defended her in front of 200 people, had spoken her mother's language with respect and care, had opened his home and his daughter's heart without hesitation. He deserved honesty. "Because I'm tired," she said quietly. "Tired of performing. Tired of being invisible while everyone sees me. Tired of the hollow success that looks perfect from the outside but feels empty from within." And because when Mia looked at me that night at the gala, she saw a person, not a CEO, not a foreign billionaire, not a networking opportunity, just a lonely person who needed kindness. No one's seen me that clearly in years. "And me?" Caleb's voice was carefully neutral. "What do you see when you look at me?" Lena turned to face him, this mechanic in worn jeans who'd somehow become essential to her in less than a week. "I see someone who carries grief with grace, who raises a daughter alone and makes it look easy, even though I know it's not, who works with his hands and takes pride in fixing broken things, who speaks Japanese because he wanted to understand the culture that surrounded his wife when she died, who defended someone he barely knew because it was the right thing to do." She paused, her heart hammering. "And I see someone who makes me want to be brave enough to try being myself instead of the version of myself I've spent 20 years perfecting." Caleb set down his beer with deliberate care. "Lena, I know this doesn't make sense. I know we're from different worlds, and this whole thing is probably a terrible idea, and there are 1,000 reasons why we should just stay friends." And he kissed her. Not tentatively, not as a question, but with the same direct honesty he brought to everything else. His hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, and Lena felt something inside her crack wide open. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. "I've wanted to do that since you stood up at that podium and told 200 people the truth about your life," he admitted. "Since I watched you plant flowers with dirt under your fingernails. Since you read to my daughter like she was the most important person in the world." "This is insane," Lena whispered. "We barely know each other." "I know you well enough to know you're terrified right now. I know you're running through every possible way this could go wrong, every reason it's illogical, every argument against taking this risk." "I am. What if you didn't? What if you just felt something and let it be real without analyzing it to death?" Lena laughed shakily. "I don't know how to do that." "Then I'll teach you, just like I taught you to plant flowers and make cookies. We'll figure it out together." "I don't have a good track record with relationships. I'm difficult. I work too much. I don't know how to communicate emotion the way Americans expect. I'm perfect exactly as you are," Caleb interrupted firmly. "And anyone who made you think otherwise was wrong. You're not too much or not enough. You're just Lena. And that's more than enough for me." Lena felt tears slide down her cheeks. Happy tears, sad tears, relieved tears, all mixed together in a way she couldn't untangle. Caleb wiped them away gently. "Is this okay? Am I moving too fast? Because we can slow down. We can just be friends if that's what you need." "Don't you dare take it back," Lena said fiercely. "Don't you dare pretend you didn't just kiss me like I matter. You do matter. That's what I've been trying to tell you." They kissed again, slower this time, sweeter, and Lena felt years of armor melting away under the warmth of simple acceptance. When they finally came back inside, it was late. Lena should leave, should go home to her empty penthouse and process what had just happened. But Caleb made coffee, and they sat on his worn couch talking about everything and nothing. Her parents' immigration story, his Navy years, the strange paths that had led them both to this moment. "What happens now?" Lena asked eventually, curled into his side with a comfort that should have felt foreign, but didn't. "Now we take it one day at a time. I have to work this week. You presumably have billionaire things to do. But maybe we have dinner Friday? The three of us. Actually plan it this time instead of stumbling into it. I'd like that. And maybe, if you're comfortable with it, we tell Mia what this is becoming. She's perceptive. She already knows. But she deserves honesty." "What is this becoming?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet, but I know I want to find out. I know that when I'm with you, I see possibilities I'd stopped believing in. And I know that Mia lights up around you in ways she hasn't since Sarah died. That has to mean something." "It terrifies me," Lena admitted. "Good. The best things usually do. Lena left around midnight, Caleb walking her to her car, a sleek Tesla that looked absurdly out of place on this working-class street. Before she got in, he pulled her close one more time. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." "I will." "And Lena? Thank you for today, for all of it, for being brave enough to say yes." She drove home through empty streets, her mind replaying every moment, every touch, every word. Her penthouse felt even emptier than usual when she arrived, the expensive furniture and designer artwork suddenly seeming like elaborate camouflage for loneliness. She texted Caleb, "Home safe. Thank you for today. For teaching me that cookies and gardens and simple dinners can matter more than any business deal I've ever made." His response came quickly. "Thank you for seeing past what you're supposed to want and recognizing what actually makes you happy. Sleep well." Lena did sleep better than she had in months, and dreamed of butterflies and chocolate chip cookies and a mechanic who spoke her mother's language with respect and love. Monday morning arrived with the usual avalanche of emails and meetings. Lena sat in her corner office overlooking the bay and tried to focus on quarterly projections and product development timelines, but her mind kept drifting to Mia's science fair project, to Caleb's kiss, to the strange new world that was opening before her. Her assistant, Jennifer, noticed immediately. "Are you feeling all right? You seem distracted." "I'm fine, just thinking about the Tokyo expansion, because legal needs your input on—" "Actually, Jennifer, I need you to block off Friday evening on my calendar. Personal commitment." Jennifer's pen actually paused mid-note. In 5 years of working together, Lena had never once requested time blocked for personal reasons. "Friday evening, the whole evening?" "Yes. And going forward, I'd like at least one evening per week kept clear. No exceptions unless it's a genuine emergency." "May I ask what brought this on?" Lena smiled, thinking of Mia's butterfly wisdom and Caleb's patient teaching and her own desperate need for a life beyond these walls. "I'm transforming," she said simply, "and transformations require time and trust and the courage to let go of what you were so you can become what you're meant to be." Jennifer stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "I'll block the time." The week crawled by. Lena threw herself into work, but found her attention fragmenting in new ways. She researched butterfly migration patterns between meetings. She looked up science fair rules and regulations during conference calls. She caught herself smiling at her phone when Caleb sent photos of Mia covered in paint from art class. Her board noticed the shift. "You seem different," Richard Yamamoto, her COO, observed during Wednesday's executive meeting. "More present. It's good." "I'm reevaluating my priorities," Lena said carefully. "About time. You've been running on empty for years." Was it that obvious? Had everyone seen what she'd been too stubborn or scared to acknowledge? That success without connection was just expensive loneliness? Thursday evening, Caleb called instead of texting. "Hey, is this a bad time?" "No, I'm just reviewing contracts. What's up?" "Mia wants to know if you're still coming to dinner tomorrow. She's been planning the menu all week. Apparently we're having fancy grilled cheese and tomato soup." Lena laughed. "That sounds perfect." She also wants to know if she should set out her mom's nice plates or if regular plates are okay. The question carried weight they both understood. Sarah's plates. The acknowledgement that Lena was becoming part of something that had been sacred to this family. "Whatever Mia thinks is right," Lena said quietly. "I'll be honored either way." She's hoping you'll help her with the science fair project after dinner. She's been collecting ideas. "I've been researching migration patterns. I have thoughts." Caleb's laugh was warm. "Of course you do. I should have known you'd approach a third-grade science fair with the same intensity you bring to billion-dollar infrastructure projects. Is that a problem?" "Not even a little bit. It's one of the things I—" He stopped abruptly. Lena's heart hammered. "One of the things you what?" "One of the things I really like about you. The way you commit completely to whatever you do. Even making cookies, even gardening. You don't half-ass anything. That's not always a virtue. Sometimes I should probably relax." "Yeah, well, I can help with that too. Balance. We're teaching each other, remember?" They talked for another hour about nothing important. His day at the shop, her frustration with a vendor contract, Mia's latest butterfly observation. It was ordinary and comfortable, and Lena found herself wishing she was on that couch next to him instead of alone in her pristine penthouse. "I should let you go," Caleb said reluctantly. "It's late." "I know, but I don't want to hang up." "Me neither. But Mia has school tomorrow, and I have an early shift, and you probably have important CEO things at dawn." "Nothing more important than this." Silence. Then Caleb's voice, rough with emotion. "You're killing me, Lena, in the best possible way." "Good. You've been killing me since you stood up at that podium. Tomorrow can't come fast enough." "No," Lena agreed. "It can't." Friday afternoon, Lena left work at 4, an unprecedented move that had Jennifer practically running after her asking if something was wrong. She stopped at a market and bought flowers, then second-guessed herself. Were flowers too formal? Too much? She kept them anyway. She arrived at Caleb's apartment at 6, nervous in a way she hadn't been before a meeting in years. But when Mia opened the door, wearing her mother's apron and a huge smile, all the nervousness melted into warmth. "Lena, you're here! And you brought flowers! Daddy, Lena brought flowers!" Caleb appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, and the smile that broke across his face when he saw her made Lena's chest tight. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi." They stood there grinning at each other like teenagers until Mia huffed dramatically. "Are you going to kiss her or just stare?" "Mia!" "What? You told me honesty is important, and you've been talking about Lena all week and getting all smiley when she texts, and I'm 8, not stupid." Caleb looked at Lena helplessly. She laughed and crouched to Mia's level. "Your dad and I are trying to figure out if we can be more than friends. Is that okay with you?" "Are you kidding? It's perfect. I've been wishing for this since the fancy party. I even made a wish on a star and everything." "You wished for this?" "Yep. I wish that the lonely lady would find people who loved her, and that Daddy would smile real smiles again, and that maybe we could be a family." Mia paused. "Is that weird?" "It's probably weird." Lena pulled her into a hug, this remarkable child who'd seen through her armor and wished for her happiness. "It's not weird. It's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me." Over Mia's head, Lena met Caleb's eyes. He looked at her with something that might have been wonder, or hope, or the beginning of love, and Lena felt herself falling into possibilities she'd stopped believing existed. This was terrifying. This was impossible. This was everything she'd convinced herself she couldn't have. And for the first time in her life, Lena was brave enough to reach for it anyway. Dinner that night felt like stepping into a life Lena had only glimpsed in other people's stories. The fancy grilled cheese turned out to be exactly what it sounded like. Regular grilled cheese that Mia had arranged on Sarah's good plates with a sprig of parsley she'd picked from Mrs. Chen's herb garden. The tomato soup came from a can but was served in matching bowls that Caleb handled with visible care, as if each piece carried memories too precious to risk. "Mommy got these plates for our wedding," Mia explained, watching Lena examine the delicate floral pattern. "Daddy doesn't use them very much because he's afraid they'll break, but I told him tonight was special enough." Lena's throat tightened. "Thank you for trusting me with them. You're careful with important things, I can tell." They ate slowly, savoring both the food and the easy conversation that flowed between them. Mia dominated the discussion with detailed plans for her science fair project, complete with hand-drawn sketches that showed migration routes stretching from Canada to Mexico. "The monarchs travel almost 3,000 miles, she said, her eyes wide with wonder. "And the butterflies that make the trip aren't even the same ones that left. It takes 4 generations to complete the whole cycle. Isn't that amazing? They're going home to a place they've never been, following instructions built into their wings." "Genetic memory," Lena murmured, "following patterns they inherited rather than learned. Do people have that too? Like knowing things we never got taught?" Lena thought about the comfort she felt speaking Japanese with her parents, the way certain foods tasted like home, even though she'd spent most of her life in America. The deep-seated need to honor her ancestors, even as she built something entirely new. "I think we do. Not exactly like butterflies, but we carry our family's stories in ways we don't always recognize. The things they valued, the struggles they survived, the hopes they held, those become part of us even if no one explicitly teaches them." Caleb was watching her with that steady attention that made her feel simultaneously exposed and safe. Is that what drives you? Your parents' story? Partly. My grandmother was a teacher in Japan who lost everything in the war. My grandfather rebuilt from nothing, came to America with $50 in a suitcase. My parents worked jobs they were overqualified for because their Japanese credentials didn't transfer. They wanted me to have the opportunities they'd lost. Lena paused, emotion thickening her voice. Everything I've built is because they believed I could build it, even when I didn't believe in myself. Have you told them that? Not directly. We're not a demonstrative family. Love is shown through action, not words. Maybe it's time to use both, Caleb said gently. After dinner, they cleared the plates together. A simple domestic choreography that shouldn't have felt significant, but did. Caleb washed, Lena dried, and Mia put things away, stretching on her toes to reach the high cabinets. It was ordinary. It was perfect. Then came the science fair project. Mia spread her materials across the coffee table, poster board, markers, string, printed photos of butterflies she'd found online. Her vision was ambitious, a three-dimensional map showing the complete migration cycle with different colored strings representing each generation. We need to make it accurate, Mia insisted. Mrs. Chen says science is about precision. Lena pulled out her phone and called up satellite migration data, climate patterns, geographic markers. Within minutes, she'd sketched a properly scaled route, calculating distances and timing with the kind of precision usually reserved for infrastructure projects. Caleb laughed softly. You're using GPS coordinates for a third-grade science fair. Is that excessive? Completely. But watching you get this invested in construction paper butterflies might be the most charming thing I've ever seen. They worked for 2 hours, Lena helping Mia understand the data while Caleb handled the actual construction. It required negotiation and compromise. Lena's instinct for perfection versus Mia's artistic vision versus Caleb's practical engineering. But slowly, impossibly, it came together into something that was both scientifically accurate and genuinely beautiful. It's perfect, Mia breathed, stepping back to admire their work. It's pretty good, Caleb corrected gently. Nothing's perfect. This is, Mia turned to Lena, because we made it together. That's what makes it perfect. By 9 o'clock, Mia was yawning through her sentences despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Caleb carried her to bed, and Lena heard the murmur of their bedtime routine through the thin walls. Toothbrushing negotiations, story requests, the soft sounds of a father tucking in his daughter. When Caleb emerged, he found Lena on the balcony again, looking out over the neighborhood that was slowly becoming familiar. She's asleep, he said, joining her. Barely made it through 2 pages of her butterfly book. She's remarkable, Caleb, the way she sees the world, the connections she makes. That's not just intelligence, that's wisdom. She gets that from Sarah. I just try not to mess it up too badly. You're doing more than not messing up. You're raising a compassionate, curious, brave kid who believes in making wishes on stars and inviting lonely people to her table. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? That night at the gala, I almost didn't go. The invitation felt like charity, like someone saying, let's show the poor mechanic how the other half lives. I was angry about it, ready to make excuses and stay home. What changed your mind? Mia? She was so excited about wearing a fancy dress, about seeing a real ballroom, and I realized my pride was about to rob her of an experience just because I was uncomfortable. So I put on the borrowed suit and went. He turned to face Lena. Best decision I've ever made. Because you met me? Because I met you. Because you were exactly what Mia saw. Someone lonely who needed kindness, but also someone extraordinary who deserved to be seen. And because watching you transform over this week, watching you let yourself be human instead of perfect, that's been a privilege. Lena felt tears threatening again. I'm still figuring out how to do this. How to be vulnerable without armor. How to want something without calculating all the ways it could fail. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. We can take this slow, one day at a time. What if I'm terrible at relationships? What if I work too much or communicate all wrong or don't know how to be what you and Mia need? Caleb cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle but certain. Then we'll figure it out together. Relationships aren't about being perfect. They're about showing up honestly and working through the messy parts. And Lena, you've already shown me you can do that. You planted flowers wrong and made terrible cookies and played with a third grader instead of running your empire. You're already doing the hard part. Which is? Being real, being present, being brave enough to try. They kissed again, and this time Lena let herself fall into it without analyzing, without armoring, without the careful control that had defined her for so long. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay," he whispered, "not for anything except sleep. Just stay. Wake up here tomorrow. Let me make you breakfast. Let this be real." Every rational part of Lena's brain screamed warnings. This was too fast, too intense, too risky. She barely knew this man. She had responsibilities, appearances to maintain, a carefully constructed life that didn't include spontaneous sleepovers in mechanics' apartments. But then she thought of Mia's butterfly wisdom, about transformations that required trust, about journeys to places you'd never been, about the courage to let old patterns die so new wings could emerge. "Okay," she said. "Yes, I'll stay." Caleb's smile could have lit the entire city. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He lent her a t-shirt to sleep in, soft and worn and smelling faintly of laundry detergent and him. Lena borrowed his bathroom, washed her face with hand soap, and stared at herself in the mirror. No makeup, hair loose, wearing a mechanic's shirt in a modest apartment above a garage. She looked more like herself than she had in years. When she emerged, Caleb had made up the couch with blankets and pillows. "I'll take the couch. You can have my bed. Don't be ridiculous. We're adults. We can share a bed without—" Lena stopped, suddenly uncertain. "Unless you're not comfortable with that?" "I'm very comfortable with that. I just didn't want to assume." His bedroom was small and simply furnished. A queen bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser covered in framed photos of Mia at various ages, a bookshelf overflowing with thrillers and repair manuals and children's books. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with being allowed into someone's private space. They climbed into bed with the awkwardness of new lovers, navigating proximity and boundaries and the strange vulnerability of sharing sleep. But when Caleb pulled her close, Lena's head on his chest, his arm around her waist, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For seeing me. For defending me. For teaching me that cookies and gardens matter. For making me believe I deserve this. You do deserve this. You always did. You just needed someone to remind you." They talked quietly until Lena's words began to slur with exhaustion, about childhood memories and favorite books and the strange paths that had led them both to this moment. And when sleep finally claimed her, Lena dreamed of butterflies and belonging and the terrifying beauty of transformation. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, Lena couldn't remember where she was. Then memory returned. Caleb's apartment, his bed, the choice to stay. And warmth flooded through her. She found him in the kitchen making pancakes while Mia, already dressed for the day, sat at the table drawing. They looked up when Lena appeared, and Mia's face split into a grin. "You stayed. I told Daddy you would. He was worried you'd leave in the middle of the night because rich people don't sleep in places like ours." "Mia!" Caleb's ears reddened. "I didn't say it like that." "You kind of did." Lena crossed to the table and ruffled Mia's hair. "I stayed because I wanted to, because this place, with you two in it, feels more like home than anywhere else I've been." The words settled over the kitchen like a benediction. Caleb met her eyes across the small space, and Lena saw her own wonder reflected back. The disbelief that something this unexpected could feel this right. They ate pancakes drowning in syrup while Mia chattered about her plans to show the science fair project to Mrs. Chen on Monday. Then she dropped a bomb with the casual cruelty only children possessed. "Daddy, when is Lena going to meet Grandma and Grandpa Turner?" Caleb choked on his coffee. "Mia, we've been dating for exactly a week. So? You said when people are important, you introduce them to family. And Lena's important, so she should meet Grandma and Grandpa. Your grandparents live in Oregon. We can't just—" They're coming next month for my birthday, remember? Lena could come to my party. Then everyone could meet her at once. Lena watched Caleb's face cycle through panic and something that might have been hope. That's a lot of pressure, sweetheart. Lena might not be comfortable. I'd love to come, Lena interrupted. Both Turners stared at her. What? You don't think I can handle meeting parents? It's not that. It's just, my parents are very different from your world. My dad's a retired postal worker. My mom volunteers at the library. They're going to ask a million questions and probably embarrass me, and they raised you, which means they're people I want to know. Besides, you met my colleagues at the gala. Fair is fair. Caleb's expression softened into something that looked dangerously close to love. You're really okay with this? With all of it? The small apartment and the modest birthday party and the family that has no idea how to talk to billionaires. I'm terrified, Lena admitted. But I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions. Mia wished on a star for this. The least I can do is be brave enough to show up. The following weeks developed a rhythm that transformed Lena's life in ways both subtle and profound. She still worked long hours at Quantum Bridge, still attended board meetings and strategy sessions and negotiations. But now her evenings had purpose beyond email and solitary dinners. She helped Mia with homework, teaching her math shortcuts while learning about fourth-grade social dynamics. She attended Caleb's motorcycle races at a local track, discovering a whole community of riders who judged people by their skills rather than their bank accounts. She learned to cook simple meals, nothing fancy but edible, and took absurd pride in making grilled cheese that didn't burn. Her assistant noticed the change immediately. You're smiling at your phone. You leave at reasonable hours. You actually take weekends off. Should I be worried? I'm seeing someone, Lena admitted. Jennifer's eyes widened. Seriously? Who? Anyone I know. You wouldn't know him. He's not in tech. What does he do? He's a mechanic, a single father. He's teaching me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings and market share. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Jennifer said carefully, That's wonderful. You deserve happiness. But Lena heard the unspoken questions, saw the concern in her assistant's eyes. People in her world didn't date mechanics. They dated other executives, successful entrepreneurs, people whose ambitions matched their own. Dating outside that circle was seen as either rebellion or slumming, never as genuine connection. Let them think what they wanted. For the first time in her life, Lena didn't care about other people's expectations. The real test came when she introduced Caleb and Mia to her parents. She'd been putting it off, dreading the inevitable complications, until her mother called and demanded to know why Lena sounded so happy. I'm seeing someone, Lena said in Japanese, reverting to her childhood language. Someone important. Bring him to dinner, her mother commanded. This weekend. We'll make your favorite dishes. So Lena found herself driving Caleb and Mia to Sacramento on a Saturday afternoon, her stomach in knots despite her outward calm. She'd warned them about her parents, about the formality, the traditional expectations, the way emotion was expressed through food rather than words. They're going to judge you, she'd said bluntly, not because you're not good enough, but because they worry I'll get hurt. That's fair, Caleb had replied. I'd judge someone dating Mia too. Her parents' house was modest, a ranch-style home in a working-class neighborhood not unlike Caleb's own. Her father answered the door, still tall despite his years, still carrying himself with the dignity Lena remembered from childhood. He looked at Caleb for a long moment. Then, to Lena's shock, he bowed slightly and spoke in careful English. Welcome to our home, Mr. Turner. My daughter has spoken highly of you. Caleb returned the bow with surprising grace. The honor is mine, sir. Thank you for inviting us. They moved into the living room, and Lena watched her parents assess this unlikely couple, the mechanic and their billionaire daughter. Her mother immediately focused on Mia, speaking gentle English and offering tea and cookies. But it was her father who surprised her most. He pulled Caleb aside and began asking questions, not about his job or his income, but about his values, his approach to raising Mia, his intentions toward Lena. My daughter is brilliant, he said quietly. But brilliance can be lonely. She has spent many years building walls to protect herself. If you are merely curious about those walls, please leave now. But if you intend to help her dismantle them, to see her, not just her accomplishments, then you have my blessing to try. Caleb met the older man's eyes steadily. Sir, I don't pretend to understand your daughter's world. I don't know how to navigate boardrooms or negotiate billion-dollar deals, but I know loneliness when I see it. I know what it's like to armor yourself against pain, and I know that Lena deserves someone who sees her humanity first and her success second. That's what I'm trying to be. Lena's father studied him for another long moment. Then he nodded. Good. That is the right answer. Dinner was a revelation. Her mother had prepared all of Lena's childhood favorites: teriyaki salmon, miso soup, rice balls with pickled plum centers. But she'd also made an effort to include American dishes, creating a spread that honored both cultures. Mia asked endless questions about Japan, about immigration, about what it was like to move to a new country. And Lena's parents answered with more openness than Lena had heard in years, telling stories about their early struggles, their determination to give their daughter opportunities, their pride in what she'd built. But we worried, her mother admitted in Japanese, then switching to English for Caleb and Mia's benefit. We worried she would be so successful that she forgot to be happy, that she would build an empire but have no one to share it with. She's sharing it with us now, Mia said matter-of-factly. And we're teaching her about butterflies and cookies and how to be happy without being perfect. Lena's mother smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Then you are doing what we could not. Thank you. As they drove home that evening, Mia asleep in the back seat, Caleb reached for Lena's hand. Your parents are remarkable. Your dad basically gave me the shovel talk in the politest possible way. What did he say? That you've spent your life building walls and I better be prepared to help you tear them down. That if I'm just playing around, I should leave now before I hurt you. And what did you tell him? The truth, that I'm falling in love with you and it terrifies me because I know how easily love can be lost. But that I'm willing to risk it because you're worth the risk. Lena's breath caught. You're falling in love with me? Head over heels, have been since you got dirt under your fingernails and looked so proud of planting one imperfect flower. He glanced at her, vulnerability written across his face. Is that okay? Am I moving too fast again? No, Lena whispered. You're moving at exactly the right speed because I'm falling in love with you too. With both of you. With this whole unexpected life you've shown me is possible. They drove in silence for a while, hands clasped, the weight of those words settling around them like a promise. Mia's birthday arrived on a perfect June day. Lena had offered to host the party at her penthouse or rent out a venue, but Mia had insisted on the neighborhood park near their apartment, the same park where she'd learned to ride a bike, where she and Caleb had scattered Sarah's ashes among the flowers. It's where our family happens, Mia had explained. And your family now, so it should be there. Lena arrived early to help set up, her car loaded with supplies she'd carefully selected, biodegradable decorations because Mia cared about the environment, a 3-tier cake from Mia's favorite bakery, presents she'd agonized over for weeks. Caleb's parents arrived mid-morning, and Lena's stomach clenched with anxiety. These were Sarah's parents too, the grandparents who'd lost their daughter and might resent the woman trying to fill that impossible space. But Martha Turner took one look at Lena and pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for making my son smile again, for loving my granddaughter, for being brave enough to step into a ready-made family. I'm terrified I'll do it wrong, Lena admitted. Oh, honey, we're all terrified. That's how you know it matters. Martha pulled back, her eyes bright with tears. Sarah would have liked you. She always said Caleb needed someone who could match his stubbornness with her own, someone strong enough to push back when he retreated into grief. The party filled the park with laughter and chaos, Mia's school friends running wild, neighbors stopping by with gifts, Mrs. Chen bringing homemade treats. It was nothing like the formal events Lena usually attended. It was better. She found herself laughing as Mia organized relay races, helping Caleb's father grill hamburgers, listening to Martha's stories about raising Caleb and Sarah's courtship. This was community, real and messy and beautiful. When it came time for cake, Mia insisted Lena help her blow out the candles. Make a wish, Lena whispered. I already got my wish, Mia said. You're here, but I'll wish for you to stay. The candles went out to applause, and Lena felt something shift in her chest. The final wall crumbling, the last defense falling away. She'd spent her entire life trying to earn belonging through achievement, through perfection, through making herself useful enough that people would overlook her differences. But this family didn't need her to be useful. They just needed her to be herself. As the sun set and the party wound down, Lena found Caleb sitting on a bench watching Mia play with her friends. She settled beside him, their shoulders touching. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For the gala invitation that started all of this. For standing up for me when no one else would. For teaching me that love doesn't require perfection, just presence. For showing me what home actually feels like." Caleb turned to her, his expression serious. "Lena, I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered. "Okay." "I love you, not just falling in love. I love you. Completely. The brilliant CEO and the woman who can't make cookies and the person who uses GPS coordinates for third-grade science fairs and everything in between. I love all of it." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "I love you too. I love your kindness and your patience and the way you parent Mia with such fierce tenderness. I love that you speak Japanese to honor a wife you lost. I love that you saw me when I was invisible. You were never invisible. You were just waiting for someone to actually look." They kissed as the sun painted the sky gold and pink, as children's laughter filled the air around them, as everything Lena had thought she wanted dissolved into everything she'd never known she needed. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning, Lena stood in Jefferson Elementary's butterfly garden watching monarchs emerge from their chrysalises. Mia bounced excitedly beside her, documenting each emergence with a camera, while Caleb worked with other parent volunteers to expand the garden further. Mrs. Chen approached with a knowing smile. "I heard Quantum Bridge made a significant donation to our STEM program." "An anonymous donation," Lena corrected. "Anonymous donors who happen to be dating parents of students in my class. Purely coincidental." "Of course." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "Thank you, Lena. Not just for the money, though that will help tremendously, but for showing these kids what success can look like when it's paired with genuine kindness. You're changing more than infrastructure. You're changing how they see themselves and what they believe is possible." After she left, Caleb joined Lena, dirt on his hands, satisfaction on his face. "The new section is looking good. Mia's already planning what to plant next season. She's remarkable. We made her that way. Together." He paused, then added quietly, "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "Moving. The apartment is getting cramped, and Mia needs more space. I've been looking at houses. Nothing fancy, just something with a yard where she can have a real garden. But they're all so expensive in the city, and I don't know if I can—" "I'll help," Lena interrupted. "Lena, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering. We're building a life together, Caleb. That means sharing burdens and resources and futures. Let me do this. Not as charity, but as partnership." He looked at her for a long moment, and Lena saw him wrestling with pride and practicality and the strange new mathematics of their relationship. "Okay, he said finally. "But I want to contribute. I'm not looking for a handout." "I know. We'll figure out something fair. Something that works for both of us." They found a house 3 weeks later, a small craftsman in the Sunset District with a backyard perfect for gardens, 3 bedrooms, and a garage where Caleb could work on bikes. It needed updating, but the bones were solid and the neighborhood was exactly what they'd hoped for. On moving day, Lena's parents drove down from Sacramento. Her mother worked alongside Martha Turner packing boxes, the two women discovering shared experiences of immigration and adaptation despite their different paths. Her father helped Caleb load furniture, and Lena overheard them discussing philosophy and fatherhood in a mixture of English and Japanese that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. That evening, surrounded by boxes in their new home, Caleb pulled out Sarah's wedding plates, the ones Mia had used that first dinner. "I want these to be ours now," he said, "not forgetting Sarah, but making new memories, building new traditions. Is that okay?" Lena held one of the delicate plates, understanding the gift he was offering. "It's more than okay, it's perfect." They ate takeout Chinese food on Sarah's plates while Mia christened her new bedroom with butterfly posters and star charts. And Lena felt something she'd never quite experienced before. The deep, settled peace of being exactly where she belonged. A year after the gala, Lena stood at another podium in the same ballroom, but this time she wasn't alone. Caleb sat at a front table with Mia, both of them smiling encouragement. Her parents were there, and his, creating an unlikely coalition of family. Mrs. Chen and half the Jefferson Elementary Parent Volunteer Committee had come to support her. The Education Equity Foundation had asked Lena to speak about her expanded scholarship program, the one that now included not just money, but mentorship, cultural support, and recognition that fitting in shouldn't require erasing yourself. "A year ago, I stood at this podium and told you about being invisible," Lena began, "about spending my life trying to fit into spaces designed to exclude me, about the exhaustion of constant translation, constant performance, constant proof that I deserve to exist in rooms like this." She paused, finding Caleb's eyes across the crowd. "But I was wrong about something. I wasn't invisible. I'd made myself invisible because it felt safer than being seen and rejected. I'd chosen isolation over the vulnerability of connection because I'd convinced myself that loneliness was the price of success." The room was utterly silent. Then an 8-year-old girl invited me to sit at her table, and a single father defended me when I couldn't defend myself. And they showed me something I'd forgotten, that belonging isn't something you earn through achievement. It's something you build through the courage to be honestly, imperfectly yourself. Lena smiled, feeling tears threatened but not caring. This scholarship program isn't just about money. It's about creating spaces where different is celebrated rather than tolerated, where students don't have to choose between their heritage and their future, where fitting in means expanding the definition of who belongs, not forcing yourself into someone else's mold. She gestured to the diverse crowd, far more diverse than last year's gala. "Thank you for being brave enough to help build those spaces. Thank you for seeing that true equity isn't just about access, it's about transformation for all of us." The applause was thunderous, but Lena barely heard it. She was already stepping off the stage, moving toward her family, her chosen, unlikely, perfect family. Mia hugged her first. "That was amazing. You didn't look scared at all." "I was terrified." "But you did it anyway. That's what brave means." Caleb pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." "For the speech?" "For everything, for letting us in, for building this life with us, for being brave enough to transform." Later that night, back in their house with its butterfly garden and mismatched furniture and walls covered in family photos, Lena tucked Mia into bed. "Tell me a story," Mia requested, the same request she'd made 100 times now. "Say, what kind of story?" "A true one, about butterflies and belonging, and how sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to trust people." So Lena told her about a lonely woman who'd armored herself against the world, and a little girl who'd seen through that armor, and a mechanic who'd taught her that transformation required trust. She told her about gardens and cookies and science fairs and the terrifying beauty of letting people see you truly. "And then what happened?" Mia asked sleepily. "Then the woman learned that she wasn't a caterpillar trying to stay safe in her chrysalis. She was a butterfly who'd been ready to fly all along. She just needed people who believed in her wings." "That's a good story," Mia murmured, her eyes drifting closed. "Is it about you?" "Yes." "I thought so. Because you're the butterfly, and Daddy and me, we helped you remember how to fly." Lena sat there long after Mia fell asleep, watching this child breathe, overwhelmed by gratitude for the wish made on a star, for the courage of a small hand reaching out to a stranger, for the transformation that had begun with a simple invitation to sit at a table. She found Caleb on their back porch, looking at the butterfly garden they'd expanded together. He pulled her into his arms without a word, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching butterflies dance in the twilight. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked quietly. "Choosing me, choosing this complicated life?" "Every day," Caleb said, then laughed at her shocked expression. "I regret not meeting you sooner. I regret all the years we both spent alone when we could have been together. But choosing you, loving you, never, not once. Even when I work too much, even then. Even when I overthink everything, especially then. Your overthinking brain built technology that saves lives. I can live with it also planning our grocery lists with military precision." Lena laughed, feeling lightness in her chest that still sometimes surprised her. I love you. I love you too. Always. Above them, a monarch butterfly landed on the porch railing, one of the last before the migration season began. It sat there for a moment, wings opening and closing slowly, before lifting off into the darkening sky. Heading home to a place it had never been, following instructions built into its wings, trusting in transformation and the journey that lay ahead, just like Lena had learned to do. She'd spent so many years being the woman everyone misjudged, too foreign, too cold, too different to truly belong. But she'd been wrong about what belonging required. It didn't require perfection or performance or erasing the parts of yourself that didn't fit conventional expectations. It required courage. The courage to be seen, the courage to trust, the courage to believe that somewhere, somehow, there were people who would celebrate your differences instead of merely tolerating them. And she'd found those people in the most unlikely place, at a charity gala, at a table where worlds collided, in a mechanic's smile and a child's unguarded kindness. She'd found home not in the expensive penthouse or the corporate empire she'd built, but in a small house with a butterfly garden, in morning coffee with people who loved her, in the ordinary, extraordinary miracle of being exactly who she was and finding that was enough, more than enough, perfect.